My wife cheated with my best friend. They planned to steal his wife's business, but we took them down. I never imagined my life would take the turn that it did. Looking back now, it almost seems unreal. But to understand what happened, you have to know where it all started. My friendship with Jake. Jake, 35M, and I, Ethan, 35M, met when we were just kids. My family moved to a small town in Texas when I was in middle school, and being the new kid was rough. I didn't know anyone, and fitting in was harder than I expected. But then, out of nowhere, this outgoing guy, Jake, sat next to me during lunch and offered me half of his cookies. That's how friendships start when you're 12. Simple, effortless, and unspoken. From that day on, we were inseparable. We did everything together. Joined the baseball team, played video games, and even spent countless weekends fishing with his dad. My own father was barely around after my parents split, so Jake's family practically became my own. His parents never made me feel like an outsider. If I showed up at their house, they set an extra plate at the dinner table without question. As I got older, home life became more complicated. My mom started drinking heavily, and home wasn't exactly a safe place anymore. Jake and his family never turned me away. On the worst nights, I'd crash on their couch, and his parents never asked questions. They just made sure I was fed and had a safe place to sleep. Looking back, I don't know how I would have made it through those years without them. Despite being best friends, Jake and I took different paths in life. I was always into computers, so I worked hard, got into a good university, and eventually became a software developer in Austin. Jake, on the other hand, was more hands-on. He loved working with his hands, building things from scratch, so he moved to Dallas and started his own construction business. He was great at what he did, but the real reason his company took off was his wife, Emily, 33F. She had an MBA and handled all the financial and business aspects while Jake focused on the actual construction work. I met Lauren, 34F, in college. She was working at a cafe near campus where Jake and I would study. At first, I thought Jake was into her, but when I mentioned I wanted to ask her out, he just laughed and said, "Go for it, man." I did, and it turned out to be the best decision of my life. Lauren and I fell hard for each other. After dating for a few years, we got married 5 years ago. Life was good. Despite living in different cities, Jake and I stayed close. Our wives got along great, and before long, the four of us became inseparable. We had Sunday brunches together, took weekend trips, and hosted game nights with friends. We were those couples, the ones people jokingly called family by choice. Jake and Emily had a seemingly perfect marriage. Their business was thriving, and they were constantly expanding. Meanwhile, Lauren and I were also doing well. She had worked her way up to managing several coffee shops, and my job in software development was stable and rewarding. Everything felt perfect. Looking back, I realize now that maybe it was too perfect. There were signs, small things I didn't pay attention to because I trusted Jake and Lauren completely. But as I'd soon learn, trust could be misplaced in the worst possible way. At first, I didn't notice anything. When you trust someone with your whole heart, you don't look for signs of betrayal. But looking back, I can see all the little things I ignored, things that should have raised red flags. It started with small changes in Lauren's behavior. She had always been open with her phone, leaving it lying around, unlocked on the kitchen counter or the coffee table. But suddenly that changed. She started keeping it face down, carrying it with her everywhere, even to the bathroom. One day, I casually picked it up to check the time, and she immediately snatched it from my hands, laughing it off, saying it was just work stuff, and that she had changed her passcode for security reasons. That was odd, but I didn't question it. Then came the perfume. Lauren had worn the same scent since college. It was something I always associated with her. But one day, she started wearing a new one, something much stronger, more expensive. When I asked her about it, she casually said it was a gift from a colleague. Something about her tone didn't sit right with me, but again, I pushed it aside. Not long after that, she started traveling more. Lauren had always needed to visit different coffee shops in her chain from time to time, but these trips became more frequent. She was gone 2 or 3 days at a time, sometimes even flying to other cities. When I asked, she said she was helping expand the business, looking for new locations. At the same time, Jake started showing up at our house a lot more often. He always had an excuse. He was helping with house repairs or just stopping by to check in. At first, I thought it was great. We had been so busy with work that we hadn't spent as much time together. But then I started noticing how he interacted with Lauren. Jake had always been friendly with her, but now there was something different. The way he spoke to her, the way he looked at her, it felt off. Too familiar. Too warm. Once, I even caught him texting her about a new recipe he wanted to try, which seemed completely out of character for him. But I dismissed it. He was my best friend. He wouldn't betray me. Everything unraveled one Tuesday evening. I was supposed to work late, so Lauren expected me home around 9 p.m., but by some stroke of fate, I finished early. Excited to surprise her, I picked up dinner from her favorite restaurant and headed home. When I pulled into the neighborhood, I saw Jake's truck parked a block away from our house. That was strange. If he was visiting, why wasn't he parked in the driveway like usual? I walked in quietly, planning to surprise them both if they were working on some house project. But as soon as I stepped inside, I heard voices coming from the kitchen. Lauren and Jake. I was about to walk in, but then I heard something that made my stomach drop. Lauren sighed, her voice frustrated. I'm tired of sneaking around. Jake's voice was lower, almost soothing. Just a little longer. Once Emily signs over those shares, we'll be set. Then we can figure everything out. I stood frozen in the hallway, my mind racing, my heart pounding. I felt like I was watching my life collapse in real time. Lauren and Jake, my wife and my best friend, weren't just having an affair. They had been planning a future together. They were waiting for Emily, Jake's wife, to unknowingly hand over more control of their company to Jake before they came clean and left us both. Everything I knew, everything I trusted, had just shattered in that moment. That in the days following my discovery, I felt like a stranger in my own home. Every conversation with Lauren felt fake, every laugh forced. I had to pretend nothing had changed, even though my entire world had been turned upside down. I wasn't just dealing with betrayal. I was living with it under my own roof. I knew that confronting them immediately would only backfire. I needed proof. I started small. I checked Lauren's phone while she was sleeping. She had a habit of keeping it under her pillow, but one night, when she rolled over, I took my chance. What I found confirmed everything. Messages between her and Jake, carefully worded but clear in their meaning. Mentions of future plans, secret meetings, and even hotel stays when they were out of town for work. I took screenshots and emailed them to myself. Next, I installed security cameras inside the house, disguised as simple home devices. I placed one in the living room, one in the kitchen, and one facing the driveway. If they ever met here again, I would have undeniable proof. Finally, I started tracking their locations. I found out that Lauren's business trips often coincided with Jake's construction projects in the same cities. Their meetings weren't just coincidences, they were planned. But I couldn't take them down alone. I needed Emily. Emily and I had always gotten along, but we were never particularly close. She was always busy running the financial side of Jake's company, and we only interacted during group events or double dates. But I knew she was the only other person who would understand the level of betrayal I was experiencing. I texted her one morning, asking if we could meet for coffee. I told her it was about Jake and Lauren. She responded almost immediately. I had a feeling this was coming. Let's talk. We met at a quiet cafe outside of town. Emily looked tense, her fingers tapping against her coffee cup. The moment I told her everything I had discovered, she let out a deep sigh and shook her head. I knew something was off, she admitted. Jake's been acting strange for months. He suddenly wanted more control of the business, which never interested him before. He pushed me to sign over some of my shares. He said it was for financial restructuring, but now I know the real reason. She already had her suspicions, but she hadn't been able to prove anything. Now, with my evidence, everything made sense that we decided that confronting them right away would be a mistake. Instead, we needed to outplay them. Emily immediately called her lawyer and began securing her company's assets. She blocked any attempts by Jake to gain further ownership of the business. Meanwhile, I continued gathering proof. I recorded phone calls, saved messages, and tracked their meetings. We weren't just going to expose them. We were going to make sure they had nothing left when we did. Emily and I spent the next few weeks playing the long game. gathering as much evidence as possible, securing financial assets, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. We weren't just going to expose them. We were going to make sure they had nothing left to fall back on. Emily wasted no time cutting Jake off from the business. Since she handled all the financial operations, she had full access to company records, and what she found was worse than we imagined. Jake had been funneling money from company accounts to fund his secret affair with Lauren. Expensive dinners, hotel stays, even a weekend getaway that he claimed was a business retreat. He was using the company as his personal piggy bank. Emily took everything to her lawyers and began the legal process of locking Jake out of the company. He still technically owned shares, but without financial control, he was powerless. The moment she had all the paperwork ready, she served him with divorce papers. Jake was blindsided. He had no idea that Emily was already 3 steps ahead. He begged her to reconsider, but she shut him down immediately. She had all the evidence she needed to ensure he walked away with significantly less than he expected. The business was Emily's now. Legally, Jake couldn't fight it. His mismanagement of funds gave her the upper hand in court. His financial accounts were frozen, his corporate card canceled, and his reputation in the business world was in tatters. He went from a successful businessman to a man without a company, a wife, or any financial stability in a matter of weeks. And then it was my turn. While Jake was struggling to stay afloat, Lauren was expecting him to come through for her. Their entire relationship was built on a lie, the promise of a future that didn't exist. She thought they would end up together, starting fresh, free from Emily and me. But when she saw Jake losing everything, her confidence started to crack. I had been waiting for the perfect moment. I wanted Lauren to see that the man she had thrown everything away for wasn't the golden ticket she thought he was. So when Jake was at his lowest, I served Lauren with divorce papers. She didn't fight it. She didn't even try. The moment she realized Jake was financially ruined, she knew her future with him wasn't what she had envisioned. She signed the papers without hesitation, probably realizing that she had traded a stable marriage for a broken promise. Jake and Lauren had thought they were playing us, that they were building a future together while deceiving the people who trusted them most. Instead, we flipped the script on them. Emily kept her company. I kept the house. Jake lost his business, his money, and his marriage. Lauren lost the financial security she had taken for granted. And just like that, they were left with nothing but each other. After everything fell apart, Jake and Lauren found themselves in a downward spiral. They had spent months scheming, believing they were about to start a brand new life together. Instead, they were left with nothing but regret and each other's broken promises. With no business, no marriage, and no financial security, Jake had no choice but to leave town. He moved in with his brother in Arizona, hoping for a fresh start, but his problems followed him. His parents, the same people who once treated me like family, were furious when they found out what he had done. They felt betrayed and disappointed, not just because he cheated, but because he had spent years pretending to be a loyal friend while secretly stabbing me in the back. Jake tried to smooth things over, claiming it was a mistake and that I had overreacted. But his parents didn't want to hear it. They told him in no uncertain terms that he had to face the consequences of his actions. They no longer saw him as the man they raised, but as someone who had destroyed lifelong relationships for selfish reasons. Even his brother, who took him in, kept his distance, refusing to get involved in Jake's mess. Jake had lost his family's respect, and he had no one to blame but himself that Lauren's dream of a glamorous new life with Jake vanished the moment she realized he had nothing to offer. With no financial stability and no promising future, she packed her bags and moved back to Chicago to stay with her parents. Her family was not thrilled to have her back. They had always liked me, and when they found out about the affair, they were ashamed of her. Lauren tried to downplay what had happened, claiming that she and I had just grown apart, but the truth was already out. Our mutual friends knew the real story, and she quickly became an outcast in our social circle. She lost more than just her marriage. She lost her reputation, her stability, and any trust people once had in her. With nowhere left to turn, Jake tried to rewrite history. He started telling anyone who would listen that Emily and I had been having an affair behind his back. He claimed that we had planned this all along, that we had manipulated the situation to take everything from him. But no one believed him. Our friends had seen the way Jake had been chasing after Lauren for months. They knew about his sudden push to take over Emily's business and about Lauren's sudden secretive behavior. His lies fell apart instantly. Instead of gaining sympathy, he alienated himself even further. His once loyal friends cut him off. His reputation in the business world was destroyed. As for me, I was finally free. For the first time in years, I didn't have to walk on eggshells around a dishonest wife or wonder if my best friend was actually a backstabbing liar. And through it all, Emily became my strongest support. At first, we were just helping each other navigate the aftermath of our divorces. We started talking more, grabbing coffee after work, and spending time together in ways we never had before. We understood each other's pain better than anyone else could. There was no rush, no expectations, just two people who had been betrayed, helping each other heal. And slowly, without even realizing it, something new was beginning to form between us. Even after everything fell apart, Jake and Lauren refused to take responsibility for their actions. Instead of accepting the consequences, they tried to rewrite history. They spread rumors that Emily and I had been involved long before our divorces, that we had orchestrated everything to destroy them and take everything for ourselves. But the problem with lies is that they only work if people believe them. Emily and I weren't going to let them tarnish our reputations. When we heard what they were saying, Emily's lawyers immediately sent cease and desist letters warning that any further false accusations would result in a defamation lawsuit. Lauren, already dealing with her crumbling social life and lack of financial security, backed off quickly. Jake, on the other hand, tried to push back, claiming he had a right to tell his side of the story. But when he realized that no one believed him and that a lawsuit could leave him in even worse shape, he finally went silent. With their lies shut down, Emily and I could finally move forward. At first, we didn't rush into anything. Both of us had just been through messy divorces, and the last thing we wanted was to jump into a new relationship just to fill a void. Instead, we focused on rebuilding our lives. Emily continued running her company, now free from Jake's financial manipulations, while I started helping her refine and optimize the company's IT infrastructure. It was just supposed to be business, but it became something more. We spent hours together discussing work, sharing stories, and rediscovering what it felt like to be around someone who actually valued honesty and loyalty. There were no lies, no sneaking around, no hidden agendas. Just trust. And that's what made all the difference. Almost a year after our divorces were finalized, it just clicked. One night, after wrapping up some work on Emily's company's software, we went out for dinner, just as we had done many times before. But this time, something felt different. As we laughed over an inside joke and reminisced about how crazy the past year had been, it suddenly became clear. We weren't just two friends who had been through the same betrayal. We were something more. And so, with no drama, no big confession, no fear, we decided to give it a real chance. This time, built on trust, honesty, and real love. Around the same time, Jake tried to return to our hometown. Maybe he thought enough time had passed, or maybe he hoped people had forgotten what he did. But the moment he showed up, he realized he had no allies left. His parents still refused to acknowledge him beyond basic politeness. His old friends wanted nothing to do with him. Even his brother, who had taken him in after his downfall, barely tolerated him anymore. He lasted about a month before leaving town again, this time for good. I don't know where he went, and honestly, I don't care for Emily and me. We moved forward. Our relationship grew stronger every day, built on everything Jake and Lauren had thrown away. Her business was thriving, even more successful than before, now that it wasn't being drained by Jake's reckless spending. And I finally felt free. Free from lies. Free from betrayal. Free from people who never truly valued me. I don't regret the past. I learned from it. But now, I'm exactly where I'm meant to be.